wisdom. Lord, we're not so much worried about knowledge. What we want to know is you. Who we want to get to know better is you. And so, Lord, help us to get our eyes off the other distractions, all the things that we put into place that we say, okay, well, I'm gonna make this my God because I'm gonna make it the thing I think the most about, and I'm the most engaged with. Father, help us to see that you're a jealous God. You're jealous for us. You expect us. You want the best for us, and you know that you are the best for us. And where all the other things that we put in the way, they're not. They do nothing but damage us and destroy us. So help us to see, Lord, just how much you love us. Help us to gain a better understanding of the gods that we've put in your place. In your most precious Son's name, amen. Well, we have been talking about the gods, the counterfeit gods, the gods and idols that we put in God's place that clamor for our hearts. And so we've been talking about different aspects of it. And so you remember a couple weeks ago we talked about the god of food and how we are so obsessed with it. It's, and we all struggle with that. And the god of sex and the god of success. And today I want to talk about the god of entertainment. And it's not just, when I say entertainment, I'm not just talking about watching television or going to the movies. I'm talking about all the forms of entertainment that exist that we're so excited about. I found a movie that I think kind of illustrates kind of what I'm talking about. There's a movie from 2005 called Fever Pitch. Now, it's a funny story about a guy who's an absolute Boston Red Sox fanatic. He lives, breathes, eats Boston Red Sox. And so when the baseball season's going, he might as well not exist. It's actually based on an old movie called The Perfect Catch, which was a soccer movie from the British in 1997. Anyway, the movie Fever Pitch is about a guy named Ben, who's a 30-year-old single guy who meets a workaholic gal named Lindsay. Lindsay finds Ben to be sweet, charming, and so attentive to her. She couldn't figure out how, with his personality, he could still be single. After all, he was good looking. He was a nice guy. He was very attentive, very much the perfect boyfriend until they hit baseball season. And Ben's obsession with the Red Sox became an obvious problem, as his whole life then revolved around the Red Sox. Lindsay saw Ben on ESPN in Florida acting like an idiot at the Red Sox spring training games. Later, when Lindsay gave Ben the opportunity to go with her to Paris, he refused because Seattle was coming to town to play the Red Sox, who were 3.5 games behind the New York Yankees. And Ben said that the Red Sox needed him, that they couldn't play without him in the stadium. The most offensive part of the movie, it starts talking about how he hates the Red Sox and he's doing things to dish the Red Sox. The movie has a sweet ending and almost romantic comedies too, but it provides us a good picture on how the god of entertainment can take over our lives and bring about chaos and distraction. In our world as a whole, and certainly in America, one of the biggest idols that has consumed people's hearts and minds is the god of entertainment. We look to the god of entertainment to make us happy, fulfilled, and alive. The god of entertainment consumes our time, our money, our devotion, and our minds. Television, computers, smartphones, gaming systems, Alexa, and Google bring the idol of entertainment right in the privacy of our own home so it can be adored and followed every single moment of every single day. I posted it as a funny meme the other day, but I realized just how appropriate that picture was. It showed a picture of a bunch of kids sitting in a restaurant, and the family and everybody's, and you know what they're doing? Is anybody talking? No. You know what they're all doing? They're all on their phones playing, talking, chatting, checking their Facebook feed. And the the line across it says, we're all slaves of our own devices. That's just it. We're all slaves. Go to a restaurant. Go out to eat. Now I'm not driving for Uber anymore because the gas prices have gotten to the point where it's just cost prohibitive to actually go out on the road. And so and if you know of anything or you hear anything, I am looking for a part-time job this summer because unlike most jobs, my paycheck ends my last paycheck will be the 30th or the June 23rd, and then I won't get paid again until August 18th. It's the way the school system works. They pay us, we're on a 10-month contract, and so we only get paid for 10 months, and so 2 months I go without a paycheck. And normally I work for Uber, but hey, that the gas prices. But when I drove for Uber, I always was amazed the people who would get in the backseat of the car, and I'm sitting there trying to talk to them, and I realize they're on their phone, they're doing their email, they're scanning their Facebook. They weren't interested in the world around them. They were so focused on their phone, on their entertainment, that nothing else mattered. And so we've brought these devices into our home, and I'm guilty too. I struggle with it, and I think one of the telling statistics is married couples, the first thing they do in the morning is check their cell phone. We're tied to the thing. You lose your cell phone and you're lost because you've given up your God. In America, sports has engulfed our culture and lives, that our favorite sports teams control our schedules, our happiness, and our mood, determining on whether our team is winning or losing. I mean, let's face it. We're so tied into sports, we don't care about anything else. I have friends who will skip church because their team is playing early and they can't miss the game because the team can't win without them. Sadly, many people know more about their famous star's life than they know about God and His Word. All this is evidence that our minds, hearts, and lives have become distorted by our obsession with being entertained. Now, before we go any further, let me clarify that the fact that entertainment is not wrong in and of itself. For the long time, the church stood against any form of worldly entertainment. They considered it a device for wasting time, a refuge for the disturbing voice of conscience, and a scheme to divert attention from moral accountability. After all, 2/3 of all men have a problem with porn. 2/3. And 1/2 of all women. And that number's rising. You know why? Because you can bow down and worship the god of porn, your entertainment, and you're worshiping two gods, sex and entertainment. And you can do it in your privacy and you think nobody knows. And so you can bow down and worship. And so the church understood that for a long time. And so churches and preachers condemned going to the theater, watching movie pictures, or playing with face cards. Now, I'll be the first to admit that perhaps the church went too far. Because I think God created entertainment. I think it's one of the gifts that God gave us. But like all of those other gods that we've talked about, that we've put in God's place, they're gifts of God that we have corrupted and turned around, and they've become not a gift, but our God. Satan takes God's good gifts and twists them into something that draws us away from God. And so we have to be very, very careful what we allow to capture our minds. So don't get me wrong, it's not wrong to watch television, although most of what's on TV nowadays, I wouldn't let my dog watch. not wrong to go to a movie if you can find something that's not, perverted and filthy. Or to be a fan of a sports team. Although, to be honest with you, I haven't seen a professional sports team in a long time. I stopped when they got to the point where they decided to exercise political power. And I'm sorry, but it's a game that kids play. I'm not going to spend money to go watch something that, that a kid does, go chase a ball around the yard. If I want to watch somebody chase a ball around the yard, I'll take my dog out and play tennis with her. I'm not interested in paying millions of dollars for some idiot to chase a ball. See, the thing is, instead of condemning entertainment, we need to learn to put those things in the right perspective with our relationship with God. Number one, and being your number one, He wants to be your all. He needs to be the focus of everything. So if you're using entertainment to glorify God and to bring Him to the nations, and there's movies that do that, there are some films that actually glorify God and teach a biblical lesson. My favorite is one called Facing the Giants. And it talks about how even if we lose, we're still going to praise Him because it doesn't matter. The winning and the losing isn't so much important. The sport isn't as important as our relationship with Him. And so there are some good movies out there. There are some things that I would say glorify God. And so that's what we have to ask ourselves. Does it glorify God? One indication the God of entertainment has taken precedent over God the Father is the way that many people give far more time, attention, money, and effort toward their entertainment than toward their relationship with God. Let me put it to you this way. Picture for a moment how much time you spend watching TV every day. Right? Just TV. I don't playing video games. I don't know. I don't know what captures your mind. Instead, you decide, you know what? I'm going to dedicate that time to God. I'm going to spend that time in prayer and Bible study. Let me put it this way. I want you to imagine a world where on Sunday mornings, people set a backup alarm clock just because they don't want to miss church. So they can get up time and get there. Sunday comes, they load up the car and head to church hours before service begins. They do this because getting to the church early is a must, and the later they do, the further they're going to have to park. Sometimes a mile away from the church. When they park their car in the parking lot, many other church members are already there, and they've got their grills out and they're tailgating at the back in lawn chairs, waiting for the service to start. It doesn't matter if it's sunny and warm or snowy and cold. People are tailgating, and with great excitement, everyone's discussing this week's sermon or last week's Bible class, and there's such a hope about what will be presented today. When the doors open, the crowd files in, and everyone's on their feet, the whole service, singing their praises and shouting their amens. There are even groups of people with letters on their shirts that communicate messages when they stand together like, God is good! Preach the gospel! Get your tithe on! And after several hours of worship, everyone's hoping the sermon goes into overtime. How is it that we can easily offer these kind of sacrifices to the God of entertainment, but we offer so little to God the Father? I mean, let's face it, an average pastor, and I'm talking about pastor, who you expect to know better, spends between 15 to 30 minutes in prayer 3 days a week. And he's doing better than most congregational members. We struggle to spend 15 minutes a day having our morning devotional. We're going to pray. Oh, I'm spiritual today. Now I'm going to go spend 3 hours watching sex and gratuitous violence on television. I'm going to get on and play my video game where I get to kill things. Or I'm playing that famous popular game, Grand Theft Auto, where the whole purpose of the game is to steal cars, evade the police, and the only police you find on the game are corrupt. You know that in GTA there's prostitutes, and you can do pretty much anything you can in the crime lord. Basically, it glorifies crime. And you're right. People come to church. They want to be entertained. We'll get there in a second, Humbert, okay? The god of football, baseball, and basketball and hockey are not the only entertainment devices and their deities. The god of video games is extremely popular. Studies show that 1 in 10 kids between the ages of 8 and 18 can be classified as clinically addicted to video games. A 15-year-old child video game addict is described as displaying all the characteristics of a heroin addict and the telltale collateral damage of a heroin addict. Withdrawal from his family, withdrawal from his friends, and lies to cover up his addiction. Oh no, Mom, I'm not really playing video games today. I'm just in my room reading a book. Oh, and then there's the god of Facebook. Consider the amount of time we spend on social networks like Facebook. I read a page, I was reading something the other day, and this guy was going on about how his girlfriend broke up with him because he started eating his food before she could take a picture to post it on Facebook. Actually walked out on him in the restaurant, and he was thinking about marrying this girl. Users of Facebook, Instagram, and Snapchat spend an average of an hour on each of these apps every single day. And if that's you, that means you're spending 3 hours a day on just social media. The god of TV is perhaps the most universally popular god of entertainment. The average American watches 4.5 hours of TV every single day. Again, let me repeat and emphasize the fact that entertainment is not as evil as a whole. But let's face it, most of us, if we're fortunate, will spend a couple hours a week in prayer, Bible study, and going to church. And if it rains, oh no, it's too difficult, I can't make it to church today. You know, the ones that always amaze me, when I was at Del Rio Community Church in Fort Worth, we had this elderly couple. They had been in church for years, and they never missed. Snow, sleet, rain, didn't matter. And they had trained their kids, and so their kids always made sure they were there. It was a very family thing. But you know what? Because of their situation, because of their health, they could have opted out. Many times they'd come in and he'd be in a wheelchair because he whatever he was feeling bad that day and he couldn't get around. But he never missed church. And then we had people that lived right around the corner from the church. Oh, it's raining, we can't make it today. Oh, it's cold out, we can't walk that far. I had to work late last night, I'm too tired, I'm not coming. Oh, the Dallas Cowboys are playing today, and they start at noon, and I can't be there. I have to be in time to watch a football game. My kid's having a birthday party, and I can't miss that birthday party, and it starts at 11 o'clock on Sunday morning. Now, like I said, entertainment as a whole is not evil. Like food, sex, entertainment is a gift from God. It is something that is good until we turn it into our own God. So let's ask a question. What is the purpose of entertainment? I mean, why did God give us the gift of entertainment? Consider the fact that God has made life as full of entertaining things. Okay? How can we not be entertained by God's creation? I mean, look at it. Go out there. I was born and raised in the mountains of North Carolina. And I'm going to tell you right now, I love the fall there because you get to go out and see the leaves turn. People drive for days to come see the leaves change in the mountains of North Carolina. It's absolutely gorgeous. There's nobody selling that. There's nobody creating that. That's all done by God. It's awesome. You can sit in the mountains and watching the leaves. When you see the leaves change, you can sit out at a picnic table and you just communicate. It's like you're so much closer to God. Now, I know you're not, but it gives you that feeling. How do you think God intends us to respond to the rainbow or the mountains or the ocean or the galaxies? I mean, God could have made this very simple and very basic, but he chose to give us a universe of wonders. What did God expect to do on the seventh day and rest that he commanded? We can't sleep for 24 hours, although some of us might try. Worship and entertainment can be the rest of our mind and the emotions we need. God gave us the gift of entertainment, but it's really a form of worship. And if we learn to make entertainment about worshiping God, it changes the whole perspective. God is a God of joy, and he wants us to know that joy. 1 Timothy 16:18 says, "He richly provides us with everything for our enjoyment." Everything you really need, you get from God. Entertainment should be life-giving. It means of engaging with our world rather than retreating from it. It should not be a substitute for life. It should all be focused as worshiping God. The problem, of course, comes when we turn the gift of God into our focus, our purpose, and our goal. It becomes the thing we worship. Think about Solomon. King Solomon, one of the greatest figures of the Old Testament, third king of Israel, son of King David. He wrote the book of Ecclesiastes. It's basically the journal he kept while he pursued entertainment, looking for pleasure and purpose. Wisest man ever lived, and yet he spent a great deal of his time looking to entertain himself. One of his early entries he wrote, "I said to myself, come now, I will test you with pleasure to find out what is good." Solomon had incredible wealth and power, spared no expense in trying to entertain himself. He began with the pursuit of laughter and found no joy in it. Next, he tried the life of partying and quickly discovered its emptiness. He tried to entertain himself with great building projects, but they didn't satisfy. He brought in choirs of men and women, and of course, he had a huge harem. In the end, he declared, it's meaningless. Everything's meaningless. It's all empty. All the pursuits of man bring nothing. The problem was he was trying to make a good thing into the only thing. He was looking for the meaning of life and amusement, but amusement has been as a sideshow, not the main event. The reality is that all those things offer us a high, but they deliver a low. Like food, we look at food and it offers us, and it leads to insatiable hunger, and the pursuit of sex ends in shame, and the pursuit of entertainment results in restless boredom. You know that our word boredom didn't appear in the English language until the Industrial Age? You never saw it before 1900. It's absent from many cultures. As a matter of fact, translators struggle in many African tribes to come up with an equivalent to the word boredom. But there's a disconnect between those cultures who don't understand the concept, and the closest word they could come up with is, I'm just tired. The word amusement actually comes from the world of worship. It comes from the word muse, which was a Greek goddess who inspired great writing, science, and artistic achievement. They were the goddesses of reflection. And when you add the prefix "ate," it means lacking reflection. So the amusement is the lack of inspiration and the lack of reflection. The reality is we seek amusements because we don't want to think. Haven't you ever wanted to come home and just plop down in front of the TV and just vegetate? Watching something mindless while you just tune out? And certainly that's fine up to a point, but here is where some of the danger begins. Instead of inspiring our boring and apathetic existence, the God of entertainment makes us even more that way. You ever watched your fourth straight reality show or flipped through hundreds of channels and concluded there is nothing on TV? I mean, my family has AT&T Uverse. I know they don't make it anymore, but we're pretty, once we get into something, we're stuck there. We have 900 different channels. There's never anything on. Of course, not. And that's one of my weaknesses. Is one of the things I've struggled with is television for a long time. And so I have to make a conscious effort to put it aside. Otherwise, I'd be the one that would sit in front of the TV for 8 hours and do nothing else. So I have to make a conscious effort not to. 30 years ago, a guy named Neil Postman wrote a book called Amusing Ourselves to Death. In that book, he argued that popular culture is dumbing us down at a startling rate. He died in 2003. And if he were alive today to see what was happening, he'd be looking around saying, I told you. We've dumbed down our society. We've got instant gratification. We can't wait for anything because you know what? On television, you can get it immediately. You don't like something, you just push a button and go watch it somewhere else. The God of entertainment promises us life, but He gives us death. Solomon used an interesting phrase 29 times in Ecclesiastes as he defined the parameters of his search to under the sun. Solomon had been looking everywhere under the sun. He had seen many things under the sun. He had found no meaning under the sun. No wonder he was tired and frustrated and empty. His sights were aimed far too low. Oh, what Solomon was looking for was out there. It just isn't found under the sun. The S-U-N. It's found in the sun. S-O-N. C.S. Lewis put it this way: creatures are not born with desires unless satisfaction for those desires exists. A baby feels hunger? Well, there is such a thing as food. A duckling wants to swim? There's such a thing as water. If I find myself a desire which no experience in this world can satisfy, the most probable explanation is that I am made for another world. If none of my earthly pleasures satisfy it, that does not prove the universe is a fraud. Earthly pleasures were never meant to satisfy, only to arouse it, to suggest the real thing. And you're not citizens of this world. Believer, you know that we're just passing through. And so you're never going to find satisfaction in the things of this world. You find satisfaction in one only, and it's God Himself. Ultimately, the gods of pleasure cannot satisfy our deepest needs. What we need most cannot be found in the stomach or in sexuality or even through amusement or even success. We want and need pure, unadulterated joy, and that desire comes only to God Himself. At the end of Solomon's book, he reached that conclusion. Here is now my final conclusion. Fear God and obey His commands, for this is everyone's duty. We are made for God, and until He is our greatest pleasure, all the other pleasures of this life will lead to emptiness. St. Augustine expressed it well nearly 15 centuries ago. Our hearts are restless until they find rest in Thee. A.W. Tozer wrote about the restless heart in an essay called The Great God Entertainment. He said the more vibrant our inner lives are, the less we need from the outside. That is, the more active we are in mind and spirit, the less we need to fall back on external media and other output. He wrote, the present inordinate attachment to every form of entertainment is evidence that the inner life of modern man is in serious decline. And guys, that was written in the 50s. Certainly there is a place in life for relaxation through various forms of entertainment, including sports, TV, movies, music, and games. The question is, do we seek to fill the spiritual vacuum inside us with empty entertainment, or is it the empty entertainment that is creating the vacuum? Allow me to insist the God of entertainment has not only taken many captive to secular entertainment, but the God of entertainment has also taken over much of church worship. In modern day Christianity, true spiritual things are being pushed aside to be entertaining. Come see our church service. We have the famous singer coming to lead our worship today. Leonard Ravenhill said, we believers are lean, lazy, luxury-loving, loveless, and lacking. Christ is now wounded in the house of his friends. You probably know for about 8 centuries, all churches worshipped without instrumental music because they believed that the singing of their voices was the purest form of worship as God commands. Then after some churches began to use instruments, other Christian leaders and Bible-believing churches continued to oppose the use of musical instruments, including Martin Luther, John Wesley, and the Baptists, many of them until the 1800s. But in our entertainment-oriented society, many churches find themselves trying to outdo themselves with more and more elaborate additions to worship. What began as special music by a choir has become a full orchestra with professional singers. What began as an organ or piano is now a full band with lights and smoke and spotlights. What began as dramatic readings and skits has now become full Broadway stage productions with dancing, flag waving, and in some places, aerialists like Circus du Soleil. As long as those who come to worship enjoy what is offered, then anything goes. We don't want to hear the long service, so I'm told now, I hear this all the time, well, preachers' sermons shouldn't be more than 15 minutes because you just want to get their attention and get out. They're there to see the music. They're here to hear the entertainers. That's one of the reasons a lot of churches don't partake of the Lord's Supper very much. And they do it once a year or maybe a quarter, and they do it at a time when service is over, and basically we want to make sure we make it the last thing we do. Now understand, this church doesn't do the Lord's Supper, and there's a reason for that, because this is a virtual reality. The only way we could do the Lord's Supper together is you guys would have to gather the elements at home, and we do that meeting here while I lead it. The problem with this entertainment orientation is the very reason an object of worship is forgotten and lost. God is the audience of the worship, folks, not you. Worship must be directed to Him, not to please the whims of the worshiper. You're not here to be entertained. You're not in church to have your ears tickled. Our worship is supposed to be God-centered, not man-centered. To worship God is spirit and in truth, as Jesus said in John 4:24, is to worship from the heart and to worship in exact obedience to God's commands, not according to our own desires. God's regulations for worship are set out in the New Testament, are neither boring nor out of date, and they are designed and driven to feed us spiritually. Right before we've had these questions, so I've got some personal questions I want you to ask yourself. First off, what are my favorite forms of entertainment? What's on your leisure diet? How wholesome or unwholesome it is? Do I watch high-quality movies, read well-written books, listen to edifying music, and look for intelligent TV broadcasts? Am I watching glorify God? Is the entertainment unwholesome that it doesn't belong in a Christian's life at all? How much time am I spending in entertainment? Is it appropriate amount or has it taken over? What other better uses of your time should be giving attention to? Ephesians 5:15 and 16 offers helpful guidance for the use of our time. Look carefully then how you walk, not as unwise, but as wise, making the best use of the time because the days are evil. When and where am I exhibiting the most commitment, passion, and excitement? Am I truly more invested emotionally, physically, and otherwise in my relationship with God, or my relationship with my sports team, or my vacation spot, or TV shows, or movies, or entertainers? What's affecting my worldview the most? Is it culture and pop culture having a greater impact on my character, goals, and mindset than is God and the Word of God? 5, am I addicted to video games, to Facebooking, web browsing, or binge watching TV shows or movies? Perhaps a fast from entertainment would be a good to see if anything is out of balance or out of control. Maybe turning off the TV, logging off Facebook, turning down the music, unplugging the gamesole for a short time would allow us to turn our eyes upon Jesus. So let me ask you a question. I'm watching TV, would you think, I want Jesus here with me during this? I want Jesus right next to me. I wouldn't be ashamed if Jesus walked in that door while I'm watching this. While I'm listening to this. There's this thing called worldview, folks. And the problem is when you get so hooked into the entertainment, it begins to affect the way you think. It begins the way you view the world. And you stop having a biblical, godly worldview, and you start thinking like the world around you. Then you don't see a problem with it. And then the world enters the church and devastates it. If we are looking for rest and recreation and from entertainment, let's not forget, Jesus said we find what we need in Him, rest for our souls. That's why Matthew 11:28-30 says, "Come to me, all who labor and are heavy laden, and I will give you rest. For my yoke is easy and my burden is light." Jesus wants to be your rest and relaxation. I came across this helpful acronym, which I thought was very appropriate to help you think this out. What's the message? What's the message and how is it coming across? What is what I'm watching teaching me? What effect does it have on me? Will I suffer damage from this? Is it so corrupted me that I can't think about God properly? What should I be doing instead? What's productive? What's constructive? Could I be out doing ministry? Could I be spending time with my God, enjoying my relationship with Him? Finally, ask God, does this qualify God? Does this glorify Him? Does God approve? Would I feel comfortable with Jesus in the room? Found a little thing from Kyle Idleman. And it's called Jesus is My Passion. Let me close with this. The God of entertainment pursued us, promised us a circus, and in our adult world, which can be gray and drab, filled with obligations and responsibilities, that sounded pretty good. We looked for attractions and surprises and amusements to create in us a sense of wonder. Maybe we'd find it in music or movies or in games or in sports. The God of entertainment was hawking them all, like a carnival barker. Step up, be amazed, be amused, come on, come on. But in the end, the music was flat, the movies were formulaic, and the games were rigged. The circus would leave town and we'd wait impatiently for another one to take its place. And then we found our passion in Jesus. If you haven't experienced it yourself, I get that it might sound ridiculous. I mean, how could a dusty old Bible character, complete with big budget movies or action-packed games or soulful tunes? But once you know Jesus and passionately pursue Him, it seems ridiculous that we thought we could ever find what we wanted on a movie screen, a website, or playlist. Jesus said in John 10:10, "I have come that they might have life and have it to the full." The real thing we are made for, and that our desires point is not found under the sun, but is found in heaven above, in our relationship with Jesus Christ. True life and joy and happiness are found in God, and everything else is empty and meaningless. Let's close in prayer. Father, I'll admit it's an area that a lot of us struggle with. We get so hooked up on getting ourselves entertained that we lose sight of what's truly important. We're so busy trying to make ourselves the focus of our lives that we lose sight of the God who's in control. Help us to see, Lord, that you love us, that you made a way for us when we didn't deserve it. You're so, so good to us, and we so deserve so little from you. We're sinners saved by grace. Help us to pursue the King of Kings and the Lord of Lords. Help us to be passionate about a relationship with him. Help us not to focus on the things of this world, but to devote our hearts and our minds and our passion to you. In your most precious Son's name. The God of entertainment. Maybe this is an area that you're